The club isn't the best place to find a lover, so the bar is where I go. Me and my friends sat at the table doing shots, tripping fast, and then we talk slow. And you come over and start up a conversation with just me, and trust me, I'll give it a chance. Now take my hand, stop it, and the man on the jukebox, and then we start to dance. And now I'm singing like, girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me. Say, boy, let's not talk too much. Grab on my waist and put that body on me. Come on now, follow my lead. Come on now, follow my lead. I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do. Although my heart is falling too. I'm in love with your body. And last night you were in my room, and now my bedsheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. Well, I'm in love with your body. 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 Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of you. We let the story begin. We're going out on our first date. You and me are thrifty, so go all you can eat. Fill up your bag and I fill up the plate. We talk for hours and hours about the sweet and the sour, and how your family's doing okay. And leaving, getting a taxi, kissing the backseat, tell the driver make the radio play. And I'm thinking like, girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me. Say, boy, let's not talk too much. Back on my waist and put that body on me. Come on now, follow my lead. Come on now, follow my lead.
Welcome back, friendly targets. Today we're going to go over the Engineer, a Rifter fit that I've fallen in love with over the past week. I thought it would take longer to make a Rifter video because they're kind of hard to win fights with, as even with the buff, they're not exactly the strongest of the Tech 1 frigates. However, I think I found a fit that you guys might like. Unfortunately, this fit could bounce over into other ships, but the reason why I think this works on the Rifter so well is for the same reason weird things work on the Stabber so well. Their bonuses are pretty much identical, as you have a damage bonus, a fall-off bonus, and they're both fast, with the Rifter being the fastest of the heavy combat Tech 1 frigates, via Punisher, Merlin, Tristan. The Rifter is the fastest, and at the end of a fight, after smaller frigates like Slasher and Executioner have already used a lot of their capacitor and burnt the hell out of their afterburner trying to negate damage, generally you can keep up with them while they're trying to run away, because Rifter's so fast. I can't do it. It's not a Stabber. Sorry. But you get the idea. Okay, so what we got going on here. First, I'm going to go over the fit, and then we're going to go over the reasons. So you're going to see some things on here that don't make sense at first, but just stick with me. because this fit on average in 1v1s has been going 4-to-1. So you win about 3 out of every 4 fights if you get a solid 1v1 with a Tech 1 frigate. Okay, for the high slots, we have 200mm autocannons. We have a Tech 2 afterburner in the mids with a Meta 4 cap booster, an enduring warp disruptor, a Tech 2 armor repair, small of course, Tech 2 damage control, a reactive armor hardener, and a small ancillary armor repair. Mid slots will rock a small auxiliary nano pump. And 2, these are not what you think they were, these are the semiconductor memory cells, 2 of them. The fit is rather forgiving as far as fittings, whereas new players should be able to fit this with just a hair of power grid and CPU left, also being able to downgrade to a compact warp disruptor if needed. For ammunition, make sure you have barrage, that's important, and then the cookie cutter on the rest of the stuff. Fusion, EMP, phase plasma. Mainly phase plasma is an all-round and for shooting the rats inside of faction warfare plexes. You'll need some nanite repair paste, of course, as many 400 cap boosters as you can fit, and for boosters I use the cheap drugs. Don't get deterred because you see drugs in the cargo hold. These are actually incredibly cheap. These are the Tier 1 Agency Hardshell or Overclocker, and then a Synthetic Drop and Synthetic Exile. Okay, reasons. Starting with the high slots. 200mm autocannons for obvious reasons, maximum damage, and maximum range. Thanks to the Rifter's fall-off bonus, much like the Stabber, you're going to hit out to about 15 kilometers at your maximum range, which is great for catching those frigates that are trying to run away at the end of a fight, or even hitting some that try to kite you. Granted, they're still in point range. This does not do a whole hell of a lot of DPS. You're barely going to push over 500 DPS with, let's say, Fusion. Did I say 5? I meant 105. Sorry. Yeah, 500 DPS Rifter, guys. GG. Anyways, you can be able to heat that for quite some time to 120, which isn't terrible, but, you know, it's not great. Okay, so let's get those out of there, or OCD is going to drive me nuts. For the mid slots, Tech 2 Afterburner for obvious reasons. This is geared specifically to low-sec faction warfare space, running around in plexes. If you think this is going to work in null-sec, well, it might if you use a scram. If you don't use a scram, you're going to die in a fiery ball of death. Moving right along, use the Meta 4 cap booster because there's no reason to use a Tech 2. Tech 2, I think, takes more heat damage, requires more fittings. But anyways, the Meta 4 is cheaper. I believe it requires less fittings, and it fits the 400s just fine. So no reason to use a Tech 2. All right, for the long point. Now, first off, the reason we use a long point... No, we'll do that second because that's more complicated. The reason we're using the Enduring is simply because of cap stability. Not that this fit is under severe cap pressure, I just like the idea of having as much capacitor buffer as possible, and the Enduring, it takes the least amount of capacitor to run out of all the disruptors. Believe it or not, as long as you're a well-skilled pilot, you actually have room to fit a Tech 2, a scoped, obviously a compact. But I feel that the Enduring's fine because, well, anything that's already gotten out to 20 kilometers, you can't hit it. It's already out there. You ain't going to catch it. You know, I'm sure there's some situations where you would have been very happy you had the extended range of a Tech 2, but there's not a lot of them, and I didn't see any in my situation. So the Enduring's just fine. And this is also going to even let you catch some stuff at gates that you wouldn't normally catch. Granted, most things big enough to catch, you're not going to want to shoot, but... there are situations where that could be useful. Now, the reason we use a disruptor instead of a scram goes back to specifically being used in faction warfare space. Most Tech 1 frigates who come to give you a 1v1, you know, just like you, they want a solid fight, they're going to be running Afterburner. And I do say most, because this is a trade-off that you simply have to make. You are eventually going to run into that one and only Merlin pilot who flies around faction warfare space with an MWD that would have died in any other fit you had, but lived because he was able to run away. That happens. It's rare. Most of my fights, they all had Afterburners. So, the reason we use the Warp Disruptor with the Afterburner is because we don't have a web. See, if they're running an Afterburner, then it doesn't matter if you have a scram or a disruptor. They're not going to go any slower or faster. However, if they have an Afterburner, a scram, and a web, what's going to happen is, once they decide to run away because they can't break your tank, they're going to pull out of scram range. You're still going to have a point on them with the disruptor, and they're no longer going to be able to web you. And because the Rifter has a high speed, you're generally going to be able to overheat and catch up to them. You save your afterburner heat only for 2 situations. Absolute dire need, because you ran into something that's doing a lot of damage, or when the target starts to run away. That's the only times you overheat with this fit. Okay, so yeah, they'll pull out of web range, and then you'll start to speed up, and you'll still have a point on them. You'll catch up to them, and with your fall off bonus, you'll be able to continuously hit them at that range. Generally, towards the end of a fight, when I see a target trying to run away, I load Barrage, which means I'm going to be able to keep hitting them. Alright, so you got the idea, and you'll get to see it in some of the fights we come to in the future here. For the low slots, I played around with this. This is really the only thing that's changed quite a bit throughout my testing of this frigate, and there are some situations where other fits might work better, but this is the one I settled on as the mainstay. Okay, most frigate combat brawling setups, they're going to have an ancillary repper. That's a granted. Okay, so you'll have an ancillary repper, which means the trade-off there is going to pretty much cancel itself out. However, with the second rep, you're pretty much going to be able to out-tank them in almost every situation. As long as you don't run into something like a triple Newt Tristan, you should be fine. The damage control, for obvious reasons, I did play around with using an Energized Adaptive Nano and no damage control, and found that that would allow me to have a much stronger tank during the in-game. Like, if you can survive the first 10 to 15 seconds of a fight, the tank on that was actually quite a bit stronger, allowing me to sustain the fight with only running the one Tech 2 rep and saving my incil. However, I found out when you run up against things like high damage neutron 8trons, high damage Tristans, and high damage Tormentors, generally they'll punch right through your tank before your reactive armor hardener has a chance to shuffle the resistances around. So I settled on this one with the damage control and found that it's a better rounded fit, as you would expect. Now, the adaptive armor hardener is really something I like on this fit, because in a 1v1 situation, assuming you survive the first 10 seconds of a fight, this pretty much allows you to out-tank anything as long as you have cap boosters in your cargo hold. Overheating it is also a good idea at the very beginning of a fight. Just do not forget to turn the overheat off after about the first 3 cycles. There's no reason to keep an adaptive armor hardener overheating. Once it's moved the resistances where they need to be, then that's fine. You stop the heat and you just make sure it doesn't turn off due to Newt pressure. And due to Newt pressure, this actually stands up quite well against one small Newt, but more than that, you're kind of screwed. Okay, and then the small ancillary armor repair, for obvious reasons. Need I say more? The rig slots. Okay, well, obviously this is just to get more tank, and the reason I use the semiconductors is for more capacitor buffer. This does 2 things. More capacitor buffer, 1, allows you to waste less of your 400 cap charges, okay? Because without these, you actually waste about 100 points of capacitor every time you boost. So, that's not good. And running 2 reps overheated without those wasting 100 capacitor, it doesn't work. The fit falls apart. You need that cap booster, the cap buffer. Okay? Alright. And it does another thing. It also gives you a better passive regen. See, your actual regen time stays the same, but because you have more capacitor, it's going to regen more points every second. Which, in a lot of situations, you'll be able to run 1 rep after your resistances have shuffled without using very many of your boosters. So it's a very well... The ship is great for endurance fights against small ships with light damage. That's pretty much it, I guess. For ammo, and I say these are very cheap boosters. These are like a mil or less a piece. I really like to use the hard shell with the synthetic exile and the synthetic drop. You can use all 3 of those together because they don't have conflicting slot requirements. Also using the the agency's overclocker instead of the hard shell might be good in a lot of situations as well to catch targets trying to run away. So, I mean, it's just a trade-off. Decide whichever one you want to take. I personally prefer the hard shell more, but the overclocker has its benefits. Now this fit will actually allow you to take on targets that would normally be out of the question for a Rifter, such as an Algos. So if you can manage to not get caught at 0, catch him off guard, kite him about 12 kilometers outside of web range, you can actually do really good against a drone boat Algos. Not a Deacon because of the newts, but the Algos definitely. So the reason why is if he has blasters or newts, they're not going to be effective at 12 kilometers, and he's only going to have drones. Drones are damage lock, which means you're going to get a maximum efficiency out of your reactive armor hardener. After a few cycles, allowing you to simply tank him with one staggered rep, conserving most of your cap boosters. Now, if you play it right and you pay attention, you'll be able to easily kill some big old slow boat like this, but unfortunately, I was so preoccupied trying to kill his drones, because this was a new fit and I didn't know how well it was going to do, that he was able to slingshot me out of range. I don't know if he was oversized AB or he just had a MWD with a plate and a bunch of rigs making him just a little faster than me, but I could have played this better and kept him in range with heat. Just goes to show you, if you can catch him off guard and not get caught at 0, you can take on an Algos. So here's a fight that I probably shouldn't have taken, and most Rifters would have died in a fiery ball of death, but due to the tanking capability of this Rifter, you don't exactly get bullied by every faction frigate you see. Now, the Vigil Fleet Issue is not exactly a ship known for pumping out a lot of DPS, but the problem with the Vigil Fleet Issue are those 3 drones. Those 3 drones can really muck up your reactive armor resistance, so his rockets combined with the drones can make it more difficult to tank him. So I consider shooting the drones here. I wasn't sure to shoot him or to shoot the drones, so I test his tank first, see how well I can apply to him. Thanks to the Rifter's fall off bonus, I can actually apply pretty well. I shoot the drones a little bit, but I was shooting them too slow and my tank was starting to run low. I also made the mistake of not turning off auto reload on my ancillary repper. Had I done that, I could have probably tanked him for a lot longer, and since I did, it was forcing me off the field. But you can see, because I'm able to hit him so well with the barrage at this range, it makes him really try to think about holding a maximum range, allowing me to easily slingshot out of his point. So there's that. Don't worry, we're going to get on to some actual kills here in a minute, but mostly I just want to keep pushing forward the fact that this is a very hard setup to bully, as long as you remember to bring barrage. See, this is a very experienced solo pilot I'm up against. He fights a lot of people and he wins most of his fights. He's in just a cheap slasher at the moment. It's designed to kite around and kind of slowly chew away at brawling frigates. However, given the fall-off bonus of the Rifter, I'm able to hit him just enough to make him reconsider his life choices, eventually shooing him off the field. I can't kill him, but not being able to be bullied around by a small kiting ship like this is always a nice thing. I would, however, stay away from Condors. Although you'll probably be able to permanently tank a Condor until he brings backup, that's just it. You'll be tanking him until he brings backup, because most Condors fit tracking disruptors, and then you won't be able to hit him at all. It's very rare that you'll actually find any pilots in Amamaki to give you a 1v1 with a Tech 1 frigate. Usually if they see you in a Rifter, they just bring a Comet or a Firetail or something stupid. But when I shouted out in local, turns out that Rain Chocolate was online. And if you don't know her, she's a fun streamer to watch, and she's got a pretty beastly Tristan. It's well-rounded with pretty good DPS. Normally I wouldn't take a Rifter up against it, but hey, this really showcases the beastly tank of this specific Rifter. It also shows you that the synthetic boosters can really give you the winning edge, as at the end of this fight I had 33 structure hit points left that I would not have had without the combined 6% armor repair bonus using the Exile synthetic and the hard shell tier 1. Also using the tracking booster, I'm sure helped apply just enough damage. Anyways, for piloting tactics in this fit, I don't get fancy, and in most situations, with a few rare exceptions like and in curses where they're slow and it makes sense to keep it at farther range, in most situations I just hit approach. Okay? I don't want to take the chance that they catch me off guard when they decide to run away, so that this ensures I'm always as close to them as possible. Now, if they try to orbit you real tight and they do get under your guns and you see that you're not getting very good hits, you can double-click in space and then hit approach again and double-click and hit approach, go back and forth. You should get better hits. The problem is you're going to spend so much of your time in this fit micromanaging the tank and the capacitor that I just don't deal with that crap. I'm confident that I have enough tank to handle pretty much all Tech 1 frigates. So I just hit approach and then manage my tank. If I had the skills to do both at the same time, like pilot straight line while keeping an eye on her not running away and managing my tank, yeah, I probably would have had a lot more structure at the end of this fight, but that's not easy to do in this fit. This is a very advanced fit, not designed for new players. Yes, new players can fit it and fly it, but doesn't mean they're going to win with it. As you guys know, my videos mainly focus on people with experience and high skill points. Alright, this fight up against an Executioner is going to show off 4 points that we discussed while going over this ship's fit. The Rifter speed. I'm actually able to just barely keep up with this Executioner. Now, I usually can't do that, but I think he was plated, maybe some armor rigs, which slowed him down. So that slowed him down just enough to make the fast Rifter keep up with him when he tried to get away. 2, the fall-off bonus. I switched to barrage eventually once I see that he's trying to kite me. My regular ammo hits fine out to 10 kilometers, but beyond that, barrage is the way to go. Second, the long point. See, when he falls out of web range, I start to speed up and I still have a point on him. If I had a scram, he would have easily been able to get away. And fourth, heating the afterburner only at the end of the fight. So I discussed there's only 2 times you overheat the afterburner in this fit. When you're in dire need of extra tank mitigating damage, or once they try to get away. I can see now that he's trying to disengage and run away, so I go ahead and start overheating the afterburner. Since I had saved my afterburner heat to the end of the fight, it means that I can just overheat it as long as I need to until he's dead. It's very likely that he had overheated his afterburner quite some time ago, and he didn't have much more to give it. Now this fight's up against more of the cookie cutter Tristan. He's got 2 ion blasters, a NOS, scram web, afterburner, small ancillary armor repair, damage control, drone amplifier, and transversal bulkheads. Now he's going to run out of his ancil charges about the same time as I do, but given the fact that I have that extra repper means I'm going to be able to supplement it. I started a range on this fight because I'm not sure if he had guns or newts. Turns out he had at least 2 guns, which is good, and he had a NOS, which is even better than a newt. I can handle 1 newt, but if they have a NOS, then that's great. Starting that fight at range also gave me an advantage. Once he puts the drones on me, that's going to give me 1, maybe 2 cycles to shuffle thermal resistance higher, which is important because the more resistance I can get into thermal before he hits me with those blasters is going to help me tank the beginning of the fight. Like I said earlier, the beginning of the fight is really the determining factor. If you can get your resistances where they need to be, then you generally will win the fight. Once he realizes it's time to bail because he's not going to kill me, he's going to start to pull off. And he's going to feel confident at first, right until he pulls out of web range. And then because the Rifter's so fast, faster than Tristan, I'm going to start to catch back up, easily being able to keep on his heels. And I have plenty of heat left in my afterburner for reasons discussed earlier, so I'm going to just slowly catch up to him and chew him away. He can't get away. Okay, 1 more Tristan fight, then we're done with Tristans. Now, I know, but there's a reason why there's a lot of Tristans to fight. It's because they're considered to be one of the strongest Tech 1 frigates, usually considered to be stronger than the Rifter. But that's not what we're actually not here to discuss this fight and tactics used. I'm just here to show off something that I've discussed many times in other videos, Z-Kill. I looked this guy up on Z-Kill after I warped to his gate. Easy to do because it was the only war target in the system. Turns out he likes to run node prop Tristans. Scram web, cap booster, dual rep. He likes to run that. So I figure, well, let's just go in and kite him at 12 kilometers, kill his drones, and then kill him. So that's exactly what we did, and then we won the fight. No need to watch it because it's boring, but there, fall-off bonus is really a nice thing on the Rifter. I like autocannons. Going up against other Rifters, and remember all these fights are assuming that you're fighting somebody with an afterburner, not a micro warp drive, but going up against other Rifters, you're probably going to win every single fight for the simple fact that it's going to come down to who's fastest and who can out-tank the other person. A cookie cutter Rifter will generally have a damage control, a plate, an ancillary, and then a gyro or an enam. And because they have a plate, they're always going to be slower than you, so even if they do try to run, which he didn't bother because he knew how this was going to end, but even if they do try to run with the plate, they're going to be slower than you. Since you can just permanently tank their DPS, Rifters don't have a lot of damage, you can slowly outlast and kill them. If you run into a mirror matchup, then it's just going to come down to piloting tactics and skill. So remember, Z-Kill is going to be your friends if people start using this fit. Okay, I'm not going to speed this fight up. This is a relatively fast fight, and these are the ones that are the hardest to win. Something like an Atron with neutron blasters can be very difficult to fight. So I pre-overheat my low slots, and I start repping as soon as my shields hit half. I'm going to need everything I got. I scroll my mouse over the reactive armor hardener so I can see when my resistances are shuffled, and I know when to stop overheating it. I'm going to need all the heat I can get out of my low slot, so I don't want to waste any heat on the reactive. Once the resistances are shuffled, you can see it kind of balances out, and now I'm good. I've got the fight as long as I can make sure I micromanage my cap and I don't let it shut off the active armor hardener because I cap myself off. If that hardener shuts off, I am very screwed. Atrons do a lot of DPS, they're fast, they can keep up with you, and they have a fall off bonus which makes them harder to kite. So this is kind of a worst case scenario. Also didn't help that this is a relatively well skilled pilot who does quite a bit of solo PvP. Okay, so now that you guys pretty much get the idea, how to fly this ship, how to fit this ship, kind of the variations in the low slot, I'm going to leave you with one more fight up against a Comet. Now, Comets and other faction frigates, especially Firetails, almost certainly mean death, okay? It's kind of just, you know you're going to die, but you go for it anyways, so I don't really recommend doing it. However, if you're a pro at using Z-Kill, then you have better chances of knowing which ones to fight and which ones not to. This was a relatively new faction warfare member. I think he was a late 2016 character, so I thought that I would stand a chance against him. As you can see, his reaction times are slow. He didn't start shooting me until just now. He doesn't launch his drones until the fight's well in, and he's using Tech 1 drones. Other than that, his fit is actually fine. If his fit was in the hands of a more skill point intensive pilot, pretty sure I would have been screwed. Let's go for it anyways. So this fit combined with Z-Kill has quite some potential going up against faction frigates as long as you pick your targets well. Seeing that CCP does not play their own game, somebody please tell the developers that a rate of fire bonus on rapid lights makes the Bellicose a terrible ship. The ship is garbage, don't fly it, but if you do fly it like this. In the high slots, use rapid lights. In the mid slots, use a scram, an afterburner, a target painter, a cap battery, cap injector. For the lows, use 2 armor repairs, an ENAM, and reactive armor hardeners. And for the rigs, things that do damage. For drones, who cares? It's the Bellicose. Let's go kill stuff.
Nope.